In the heart of ABA's bustling market, where the air was thick with the aroma of spices and the cacophony of haggling voices, stood a modest food stall owned by Sade. Once, her stall had been the epicenter of culinary delight, drawing customers from near and far who craved her delectable dishes. But those days had faded into memory. Now, Sade watched helplessly as her clientele dwindled, their appetites seemingly diverted elsewhere. The culprit behind this shift was Ebony, a newcomer whose food stall had rapidly gained an almost cult-like following. Positioned strategically at the market center, Ebony's stall was perpetually surrounded by eager patrons. From dawn till dusk, the line never seemed to shorten, and the clamor of satisfied customers echoed through the market. What baffled Sade was not just the popularity of Ebony's food but the fervor it incited. People behaved as if under a spell, their eyes glazed with anticipation, their manners forgotten in the scramble to be served. Sade couldn't comprehend their allure. She had sampled Ebony's dishes, noting that while they were palatable, they lacked the distinctive flair that had once defined Sade's own cooking. Moreover, Ebony sourced her ingredients from the same vendors as everyone else, using the same spices, the same grains, the same meats. Yet, there was an intangible quality to her food that ensnared the senses and left patrons yearning for more. One sweltering afternoon, as Sade sat in her stall, fanning herself with a worn piece of cardboard, a commotion erupted near Ebony's stall. A madman, known to wander the market muttering incoherently, was now shouting with alarming clarity. "You're all eating snakes," he bellowed, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and revelation. "Snakes slithering in your bellies." The crowd reacted with a mix of amusement and irritation. Some laughed, others shooed him away, dismissing his outburst as another episode of lunacy. But Sade felt a chill run down her spine. The madman's words resonated with the unease that had been festering within her. Could there be truth hidden in his madness? That night, sleep eluded Sade. Her mind replayed the day's events, the madman's proclamation intertwining with her own suspicions. Desperate for answers, she decided to seek out Mama Ed, a revered seer known for her wisdom and insight into the unseen. The journey to Mama Ed's abode was arduous, winding through dense foliage and treacherous paths. Upon arrival, Sade was greeted by the scent of burning herbs and the soft hum of ancient chants. Mama Ed, a stooped figure with eyes that seemed to pierce through one's soul, welcomed her with a knowing smile. "You've come seeking the truth about Ebony," Mama Ed stated, more as a fact than a question. Sade nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's something unnatural about her food. People act possessed." Mama Ed's gaze intensified. "Ebony's success is not born of culinary skill but of dark practices. Her food is laced with enchantments, drawing people in, binding them." Sade's heart pounded. "What can I do?" The seer handed her a small pouch filled with a fine, shimmering powder. "Sprinkle this near her cooking pot when no one's watching. It will reveal the truth. But be cautious. The forces at play are powerful." The next day, Sade returned to the market, the pouch concealed within her garments. She observed Ebony's stall from a distance, waiting for the opportune moment. As the crowd surged forward, clamoring for food, Sade approached under the guise of a customer. With practiced ease, she released the powder near the base of the cooking pot and retreated. Moments later, a low rumble emanated from the pot. The ground trembled slightly, and the pot's lid began to rattle. Suddenly, with a deafening hiss, a massive snake burst forth, its scales glistening ominously. The crowd screamed, scattering in all directions. The snake's eyes locked onto Sade, who stood frozen in terror. Ebony attempted to calm the chaos, but the damage was done. The illusion had shattered. The market buzzed with fear and speculation. Ebony vanished that day, her stall abandoned, her whereabouts unknown. In the aftermath, Sade's stall slowly regained its former glory. Customers returned, drawn not just by her food but by her integrity. The tale of the snake in the pot became legend, a cautionary story whispered among market-goers. And Shad, once overshadowed, stood tall, her faith in truth and perseverance vindicated. The days following the horrifying revelation at Ebony's stall were anything but ordinary. Whispers filled the narrow paths of the marketplace, traveling faster than feet could move. The story of the giant snake that had risen from the cooking pot at Ebony's stall was told and retold, each version more dramatic than the last. Children mimicked the snake with hissing noises, parents shushed them with anxious glances, and vendors quietly wondered whether their own stalls would be next. Some even began closing shop early, fearing that whatever haunted Ebony's cooking might still linger in the air. Shad tried to carry on as usual, but it wasn't easy. Though her stall slowly regained some of its former glory, each smiling customer reminded her of the horror she'd unleashed. She didn't regret exposing the truth, but the memory of the giant snake haunted her dreams. Night after night, she woke drenched in sweat, the snake's glowing eyes burned into her mind. More troubling, however, were the visitors. They didn't come to buy food. They came in silence, standing near her stall, observing. At first, she thought they were curious villagers, but something about their demeanor felt wrong. They didn't blink often. Their faces were expressionless. When she tried to speak to them, they walked away. And every time they left, she found a small, smooth stone near her stall, always shaped like an eye. One morning, as she had swept her stall, she noticed a young girl staring at her from across the path. The girl looked no older than 10, dressed in a faded yellow dress and holding a tattered doll. Her eyes were strangely familiar, large, dark, and unblinking. Shad smiled, but the girl didn't return it. Instead, she opened her mouth and, in a voice far too deep for a child, whispered, "You disturb the balance. Now they will come." Shad's broom fell from her hand. She rushed toward the girl, but by the time she reached the spot, the child was gone. Shad asked the neighboring vendors if they'd seen her, but none had. Some laughed nervously, others looked uneasy. Later that day, Mama Ed came to visit. Her presence alone brought a wave of calm, though her expression was grave. "They know what you've done," she said without preamble. "Who are they?" Shad asked. "The keepers. Guardians of the hidden world that lies beneath ours. Ebony broke the rules, but your actions revealed their secrets to many eyes. That balance must now be restored." Shad's knees felt weak. "What does that mean for me?" "It means you must choose. Run, and they will hunt you. Stay, and you must prepare." "Prepare for what?" Mama Ed looked toward the horizon where storm clouds gathered. "For the trial of truth." That evening, Shad closed her stall early. Her heart was heavy, but her mind raced. What was the trial of truth? What did the keepers want from her? And why had no one seen Ebony since the incident? Determined to find answers, she decided to visit Ebony's home. Ebony lived at the edge of the village, near the dense forest that locals rarely dared to enter. The path to her house was overgrown, as if no one had used it in weeks. When Shad arrived, the place seemed abandoned. The door was slightly ajar, creaking softly in the wind. Inside, the house was a mess. Dried herbs hung from the ceiling, strange symbols were painted on the walls, and a large book sat open on a wooden table. Shad approached the book, careful not to disturb anything. The pages were filled with rituals, chants, and illustrations of creatures she couldn't name. On the final page, a message was scrawled hastily in red ink. "The trial begins when the eyes open." As she read the words, a loud thud came from behind her. Shad spun around. A large mirror in the corner of the room had fallen face up, and reflected in it was not her own image, but that of the snake, coiled and watching. Shad ran. Back at her home, she locked every door and window, lit every candle she owned, and sat in the middle of the floor clutching a wooden carving of her late mother. Her thoughts spun like a whirlwind. Had she truly disturbed some ancient force? Was her quest for truth worth the terror that now crept into her life? At midnight, her candles flickered. The wind outside grew fierce. And then came the knock. Slow. Deliberate. 3 times. She approached the door cautiously. Who is it? Silence. Then, from the other side, truth must feed. She backed away, heart racing. The knocking resumed, louder now, echoing through her bones. Suddenly, every candle went out. The room plunged into darkness. And in that darkness, Sade saw them. Eyes. Dozens of glowing eyes. Watching. Waiting. The trial of truth had begun. The next morning arrived with a tense silence in the town. The sun, though bright, seemed to shine with less warmth, casting long shadows over the market square. Sade sat inside her store, staring at her pots, her fingers clutched tightly around the edge of the counter. The events of the previous day kept replaying in her head, the moment the packet was sprinkled, the eruption of chaos, the massive black snake rising out of Ebony's cooking pot. It had been a revelation not just for her, but for the entire town. A truth so disturbing that even the most skeptical mouths were now shut in disbelief. Customers trickled in hesitantly that day, eyes darting around nervously, scanning for anything unusual. No one mentioned Ebony or what had happened. It was as though speaking of it might summon the creature again. Still, the fear was thick in the air. People bought food, but they didn't linger. Mothers clutched their children closer, and whispers passed quickly between mouths, followed by worried glances. No one knew if the snake would return or what had truly caused it to emerge, but one thing was certain, they believed now. Sade tried to focus on her work. She stirred the pot carefully, checked the spices more than necessary, and smiled too much, her nerves barely hidden beneath her false calm. Deep down, she felt a strange mix of triumph and guilt. She had uncovered the truth, saved her business, and likely prevented something worse, but she had also exposed the horror none of them were ready for. Later that afternoon, Mama Ed visited the store. Her steps were slow but steady, her face calm, yet observant. Sade quickly offered her a stool, and the older woman sat, placing a small wrapped package on the table. "You've done well, Sade," she said quietly. Sade blinked. "I didn't expect that." "That creature. What was it?" Mama Ed sighed. "It was a spirit. A guardian twisted by evil. Once used to protect, it had turned into something monstrous because of what Ebony was feeding it." "What do you mean?" "She made a pact," Mama Ed explained. "Long ago, when her business began to struggle, she sought out dark help. In exchange for prosperity, she agreed to feed the spirit through her food. Not literal snakes, but sacrifices, spells, and a twisted kind of spiritual energy. Over time, the spirit grew stronger, darker. It demanded more. The powder you used was from the root of truth, an ancient herb that reveals hidden spirits when near their host." Sade swallowed hard. "So all those people were unknowingly part of a ritual?" "Yes. But the truth is out now. The spirit can't hide anymore. It will fade without its feeding source. Ebony's disappearance confirms it. She's gone to escape punishment, or perhaps, she's been taken by the very thing she fed." Sade shivered. The thought of a woman being devoured by her own summoned demon was terrifying, yet strangely fitting. She looked around the market, at the other vendors slowly returning, setting up stalls with wary eyes. "Will the people trust again?" she asked. "They already are," Mama Ed said, placing a hand on her arm. "You're here. You stood for the truth. It won't be easy, but the market needs someone honest now more than ever." That evening, Sade closed her stall a little later than usual. The air felt lighter, though a sense of caution still lingered. She walked home through the narrow path between the houses, her basket balanced on her hip. The streets were quieter than normal. A few lamps flickered in windows, and the sound of crickets buzzed softly around her. As she reached the end of the road, a child ran up to her, a little girl with wild hair and bright eyes. "Auntie Shad," she shouted. "Mama said your food is the best again." Shad smiled genuinely for the first time all day. "Tell Mama I'm grateful." The girl beamed and ran off. Shad watched her go, her heart easing. Maybe things would be alright. But that night, a new dream came. Shad stood in the marketplace again, but it was quiet, too quiet. All the stalls were empty, the pot cold, the food gone. She turned and saw the pot, the one from Ebony's stall, now sitting in the center of the square. It was shaking again. She stepped closer, and a voice echoed from inside it. "Truth is not the end. Truth is the beginning." Suddenly, the pot shattered, and light burst out in all directions. Shad covered her eyes, and when she opened them, she stood in front of her stall again, awake, sweating, her chest pounding. The dream haunted her for days. A week later, elders from the town visited her stall. One by one, they praised her bravery. Some came out of guilt for doubting her, others, out of respect. She became more than a vendor, she became a symbol of truth. But with respect came responsibility. People began asking her to check other stalls. Rumors started that she could see spirits. Some brought her tokens, others prayers. Shad was overwhelmed. She never wanted to become a seer or a spiritual leader. All she wanted was to cook food and make a living. Mama Ed came again, watching the crowd. "You've become a light, Shad. And lights attract everything, good and bad." "I didn't ask for this," she said. "But it found you. Now, you must decide, will you continue cooking? Or will you accept the role the people want you to play?" Shad thought for a long moment. She looked at her stall, her pots, her recipes. They were part of her soul. But she also remembered the fear, the lies that had festered under their noses. "Maybe I can do both," she finally said. "Cook honest food. And speak the truth when I see it." Mama Ed nodded, her face proud. The months that followed were filled with healing. The market slowly returned to its former vibrancy. Stories of Ebony faded into cautionary whispers, while Shad's stall became the heartbeat of the square. Other vendors started taking greater care, cleaning more, praying before cooking. Fear transformed into mindfulness. And the black pot? It was never found again. Some said it was taken by spirits. Others believed it was buried deep under the earth. But one thing was certain, the town would never forget the day the truth cooked itself alive. Shad never stopped cooking. But now, she did more than feed bellies, she fed souls. And every evening, as she closed her stall, she whispered to the wind, "Let the truth stay warm. And may no one ever taste lies again." The wind would carry her words into the night. And somewhere, deep in the unseen places of the world, the spirits listened, silent, waiting, watching. But this time, truth had a guardian. Her name was Shad.